The shades of death, diaries, journals, accounts of our daily lives. I think we all enjoy turning the pages of a diary, trying to find the most exciting and revealing events of someone's life, or reacquainting our own accounts in history. The Reverend John Heckewelder was a Moravian missionary to the North American Indians during the second half of the 18th century. His travel observations were painted in words that if you closed your eyes, the description of images and places flashed before you. John was born in England and came to America with his parents at the age of 11 and settled in the Moravian town of Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. At a young age, John saw and felt great remorse in the plight of the Native Americans, being driven from their homelands. He had great respect and admiration for their culture. He lived among them for years, worked in their fields, fished, learned their language and culture. Heckewelder's first trip into the Ohio country was at the age of 19. He accompanied 52-year-old Christian Frederick Post. Post was also a Moravian missionary. During his lifetime, with impeccable skill and courage, he arranged diplomatic meetings and treaties between the indigenous people and the Pennsylvania government and the British Army. Heckewelder departed on his journey from his home in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania on March 8, 1762, and was to meet up with Christian Post in Lidditz, Pennsylvania. For the most part, their course would follow the route General John Forbes' army cut in 1758 to take French-held Fort Duquesne, now present-day Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. From here we fast forward his journey to March 30th, 1762, leaving the garrison at Fort Bedford, now Bedford, Pennsylvania, and starting his ascent of the Allegheny Mountains. Quoting from Heckewelder's journal, "The snow began to fall rapidly and had already covered the ground to a depth of 3.5 feet. The cold became more intense, and we were reminded of our possible fate by a large number of carcasses of horses, which were scattered along the mountain path. However, there was nothing left for us to do but push on as fast as we could. It was 11 miles to the nearest habitation, and to turn back was out of the question. Fortunately, the snow ceased falling in the afternoon. Otherwise, we should have lost the road and perished. After a most painful ride, we managed to gain the summit of the mountain. Without halting, we began to descend and soon found ourselves in the midst of a thick and dark forest of hemlock trees." This dark forest of trees that Heckewelder was passing through historically was known as the Shades of Death, as referred to by General Forbes' army and other travelers on the road. The trees were so tall with a dense canopy, it was rare for daylight to hit the forest floor, only in places where old trees had fallen. This virgin forest remained intact until the beginning of the 20th century. Returning to the journal, At last, after a hard day's journey, and just as night came on, we succeeded in reaching the cabin of a hunter, whose name was Jack Miller in Edmund Swamp. The Edmund Swamp was named after Edmund Cartledge. He was a licensed Indian trader as early as 1727. While trading west of the Alleghenies, he found the swamp a suitable base camp. In 1758, General Forbes' army built a temporary redoubt here for supplies and defense of advancing road building crews. The small stream that drains this valley was named Miller Run, after its early settler, Jack Miller. Returning to the journal, scarcely had we entered when the wolves began their dismal howl, which was the hunter's night music all year round. Jack had no stable, but our horses found tolerable pasture on a piece of land of about 3 acres, which had been cleared and fenced by the hunter and his sons. The young men offered to watch our beasts and protect them from the wolves. A bell was fastened around the necks of each horse. A few fires were kindled. The hunters took their guns and, followed by their dogs, began their watch, while we tried to refresh ourselves by a good night's sleep. But in this we were disappointed. The howling of the wolves, the barking of the dogs, the tinkling of the bells, by means of which the young men were enabled to tell where the horses were, and more than all the continual shouting of the guards from without, to assure their father of their watchfulness, and the answering cry of the old hunter from within, drove sleep from our eyes. Still, we were thankful for the safety in which we were permitted to pass the night. And the next morning, we took an affectionate leave of this wild but hospitable family. If I could interview Jack Miller today, I believe he would relate similar stories of travelers he saved from perishing from the harsh weather of the Alleghenies. I've read this account many times over the years, and now sharing it with you, I find the same excitement in Heckewelder's description of this untamed wilderness as I did the first time I read it. Heckewelder would eventually reach the Delaware village on the banks of the Muskingum River in eastern Ohio. He would suffer from reoccurring fevers. Friendly Delawares warned him of impending danger upon his life by northern Indians that were trying to ally the Delawares against the British. This was the prologue to Chief Pontiac's rebellion. Heckewelder was urged to leave the village and would arrive back home in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, November 27, 1763. His first mission a failure, but he was not defeated. It is said that Heckewelder would make at least 30 journeys over the Alleghenies. Indwelled in his mind was a lifetime quest to form a brotherhood with the Native Americans, to better understand and document a way of life, a culture that he would know was soon swept away as dry grass in a windswept fire. Thank you for watching this episode of Tales of the Alleghenies.